Hi everyone, it's John from WoT. Welcome back to another video in my spoiler-free Explain series. In this video series, I plan on taking certain aspects of Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time and explaining it completely spoiler-free. That way you'll get a little more information, maybe a little bit earlier than you normally would have if you organically read this series from book 1 to 14, but it won't spoil anything at all for you. So if you haven't read the series or you haven't watched the show yet, then don't worry. These videos are for you. They'll give you all the information you need to know about all the different aspects of The Wheel of Time. Now today we're tackling the Shadowspawn. Shadowspawn refer to basically any non-human creature that serves the Dark One. But we'll get into that. We're going to go through their history, how they were created, and all the different types of Shadowspawn there are. Now in the book series we meet some types of Shadowspawn quite frequently. Other types we meet maybe only once. And there are some types that are mentioned but we don't actually get to see. 3,000 years before the book series even started, during the War of Power, the Dark One broke free of his prison and waged war on the side of the light. Now when he did so, people flocked from all over the world to his banner to fight on his side, but that wasn't quite enough. So Aginor, one of the Dark One's commanders, decided that he would make Shadowspawn. Now the Shadowspawn were a twisted mix of human and animal stock fused together with genetic engineering and also infused with shadow taint from the One Power. Now when he did this, his experiments more often than not failed. So a lot of people and animals would die in his experimentation process. It's estimated that when making the Trollocs alone, 50 million people were killed. Now when he did this, it gave them special powers, and it gave them abilities beyond what normal men would have. He was only able to create a few different types, and we'll go through them in today's video. Alright, so the first Shadowspawn we're going to talk about today are Trollocs. Now Trollocs stand about 8 feet tall, they have the torso of a man, and the head and feet of an animal. Generally a bird, a bear, a wolf, or a ram. Now, when Aginor first created them, he considered them a failed experiment because he twisted together human and animal DNA along with the Shadow's taint, trying to make the perfect soldier. He got something very big and very powerful, but that was pretty much it. Now, Trollocs are known to be very lazy, so if they're given a task, they'll do anything they can to get out of it or give up very easily. They're not very bright either. While they have their own language and their own society and divide themselves up into bands and govern themselves, most of them cannot speak the common tongue, nor care to ever learn. They also can't really figure things out on their own. They have great senses. They can smell really well. They can see in the dark. However, bright lights blind them and loud noises, they don't like those either. They're horrified of water because they can't swim and they won't wade in anything more than waist deep. So generally, they're just not great soldiers. In addition to all of that, when they do get into battle, bloodlust generally overtakes them and they'll fight friend or foe alike. They don't care who it is as long as they get to kill because they really enjoy it. Now the last little bit I want to mention about Trollocs are all the Trollocs you see in the series are men. The men go out and do the fighting, the men do all of the things outside of Sheol. Now the female Trollocs are kept in pens for breeding, and that's pretty much all they're used for, so it's a pretty terrible life even for a Trolloc. Alright, let's get on to our next Shadowspawn. Okay, so now we have the Myrddraal. Now Myrddraal are known by a bunch of different names in the series, the eyeless, half-man, lurks, or fades, and they look kind of like a regular person, except they're very pasty white and they have no eyes. So I guess that's where eyeless comes from, right? All right. When these were created, they were not actually created by the Forsaken or Aginor. So the first Shadowspawn we're going to talk about that are not constructs. Now, this Shadowspawn was sort of an accident. Now, Trollocs are very well-known prolific breeders. They like having lots of Trolloc babies. Occasionally, however, the animal and human stock in that baby is imbalanced. So the human stock is, stronger, and when the human stock is stronger, so is the Dark One's taint, and what the end result is a fate, or a Myrddraal. Now, Aginor experimented on all kinds of these, trying to figure out how they did the things they did, because they have all kinds of special abilities, and eventually he came to the conclusion that the Dark One gave them their powers, so we don't really know how that happened. They couldn't figure it out. So we're going to go through some of their special abilities and the drawbacks that they have to some of these abilities as well. So the first ability they have is something known as a link. Now they can link with Trollocs and make them do what they want to a certain degree. Now this was the answer to how terrible Trollocs were as soldiers. So they can be linked to Myrddraal. Myrddraal can command them in the field and make them march on positions and do certain things. Now it's not total control, but it's pretty good. The downside to this link is if the Myrddraal dies, well, every Trolloc that's linked to him also dies. Not really seen as a downside in the Dark One's eyes, though, because let's face it, if a Myrddraal's in charge of 50 Trollocs and he dies, they're all going to run away anyway because they're very cowardly. So it's a win-win for the Dark One. The next ability they have is Fear. So if you look at them, you are paralyzed with fear. Really great for controlling the Trollocs as well, but really amazing in battle. So someone who is not in very well command of their emotions would have a very hard time fighting Fade, because they're going to be paralyzed with fear the whole time. Probably be cut down before they can lift their sword. The next thing we're going to talk about is the fact that they are slightly out of phase with reality. So if you're looking at them in a windstorm, their cloak doesn't move. Kind of hard for them to blend in when they do that, I guess. But it does enhance their agility quite a bit. So they are very agile, very well muscled, and they are very good swordsmen. So when you're fighting a Fade, a common soldier basically has 0 shot. A very well experienced soldier or a blade master, probably even or better odds in their favor. And an Aes Sedai could definitely take one out. But against a normal person, not so much. You're going to have a hard time with a Fade. Now the next thing we'll talk about with Fades is the fact that they can ride shadows. So if there's shadows in the room that you're in, it can jump into that shadow and come out anywhere else in the world where there's another shadow. Kind of neat. They don't know how they do it, but it makes for a really good way to send messages or to scout. And the last thing we'll talk about is how hardy the eyeless are. So Fades are exceptionally hard to kill. You basically kind of have to behead them, and even after they're beheaded, they flail around and they do all kinds of crazy stuff trying to hurt you before they eventually die. Their blood is also very corrosive, so if it gets on your weapons or armor, it's going to eat through it. If it gets on you, it will burn you. So, again, pretty hard to die. Kind of like the aliens from the Alien movies, if any of you saw those. And the last thing is their swords themselves are forged on the slopes of Sheo Ghul, and they are not the crappy weapons that the Trollocs are given. These things are made by another construct called Forgers that we'll talk about later on, and they're infused with the souls of Borderlanders that are caught in raids. Now, this gives the sword all kinds of special properties, but basically it boils down to if you're cut with one of these things, unless an Aes Sedai is there to heal you, you're going to die. So they're very good killers, they're very good fighters, and they are very smart. They can speak the common tongue, and there have been times in the books where they've been able to blend in enough with the common people to actually interact with them as well. Alright, so let's get on to our next Shadowspawn, the Draughr. So Draughr are constructs as well. Now, the Dreadlords during the War of Power did create them, so they took regular people, and I wouldn't say volunteers because no one would volunteer for this, and infused them with the animal stock and the Dark One's taint, and out popped Draughr. They are about the size of a regular person, but they're very gaunt, they're very skinny and frail and weak. They have giant bat-like wings that they wrap around themselves when they're walking around to kind of look like a cloak, although they don't do a terribly good job of blending in if there's any sort of light around, because you're going to be able to tell they're wings and not a cloak. But if it's very dark out, maybe. Now, Draughr have a couple of abilities. The first one being is that they're terrible fighters. They're just horrible. I mean, in a one-on-one fight, fighting a Draughr, if they're just fighting with their hands, anyone could probably beat them because they are very frail, they're very weak, and they are not trained to fight. They are, however, used as assassins. So what they have is they have something called a song or a croon. So they'll fly up to their target and they'll sing. And when they sing, it hypnotizes them. And it hypnotizes them to the point where they don't want to do anything else. They just want to stand there and listen to the song. The Draughr will get very close. Then they'll do two things. The first thing they'll do is they'll consume their soul. And then after they consume the soul, they'll consume their life force. And that's pretty much the only real ability a Draughr has, and part of the reason why they're used as assassins. Now, if someone is rescued before they're killed, but after their soul is consumed, they are a shell of themselves, and they don't speak, they don't do anything the rest of their lives. They're just kind of alive, but not. So essentially, it's better thought that they should die because they're not really there anyway. Now, Draughr are normally used in conjunction with other attacks by Myrddraal and Trollocs to distract from the main objective of them coming in to assassinate someone. Alright, let's get on to our next Shadowspawn, the Darkhounds. Now, Darkhounds were first created by Dreadlords during the War of Power. However, initially, what they did is they twisted the souls of wolves to serve the Dark One. After that fact, though, they didn't have to create any more because the Darkhounds would create their own. They would find the soul of a wolf and they would twist it themselves to serve the Dark One. So they kind of are, they don't breed, they don't make children. However, they're like a virus. They'll infect wolves and make them serve the Dark One and turn them into Darkhounds. Now, Darkhounds hunt in packs, and they're about the size of a pony each, so that's That's pretty scary. A whole bunch of pony-sized wolves coming at you trying to kill you. They're also very, very hardy. They have regenerative abilities, so if you cut off their legs, and in some cases their heads, they'll grow that stuff back and they'll keep fighting. There are some strains of Darkhounds that regenerate so well, especially some of the older strains, that nothing short of Balefire will kill them. And now Balefire is a weave that has been outlawed by the Tower for years, but in some cases you have to do what's outlawed in order to save your own life. Now, and in addition to being very, very hardy and very, very hard to kill and having giant teeth and being the size of a pony, their saliva is also deadly poison. So if you get it on your skin, unless you have an Aes Sedai nearby that can heal you or help you out, you're probably going to die anyway. Now these packs are controlled by a master, generally a Forsaken or a Dreadlord, and they're sent out as assassins. So they're said to go kill a single target, and they are single-minded in that determination. They will stay in that target until they're all dead or the target is dead. Now, rainstorms and thunderstorms, sometimes they deter them a little bit, but if they have a target in mind, they will still go out during them to find that person. Now, the only way to tell if you're being tracked by Darkhounds is if you see footprints in stone. They don't leave footprints on the regular earth or mud or grass, just on stone. So if you see those, you know you're in trouble. All right, let's get on to our next Shadowspawn, the greymen. Greymen, and I'm saying greymen because very few women ever actually take the steps to become a greymen, because like some of the Aes Sedai say in the books, women aren't that stupid. Essentially what it is it's a regular person who gives up their soul to the Dark One in exchange for some abilities. So this is the second Shadowspawn on our list that is not a construct. It was not actually created. It's someone who's giving up their soul to the Dark One. Now, when the man, or in very rare cases, woman, gives up their soul to the Dark One, they gain the ability to become completely unnoticed, and that's pretty much it. It's a pretty poor trade, I think. It makes them fantastic assassins, because they could be in the same room with you, and you would not notice that they're there. And they can take out their target and go back and get another target afterwards. Walk in and out of anywhere completely unnoticed. All right, our next Shadowspawn we're going to talk about are the Jumara. These creatures in the books are larval stage of something even nastier. Now, Agenor created them during the War of Power, basically as a way to see how bad he could create something. He didn't intend them to serve in the armies, although they did eventually. It was just how terrible can something be that he created. That was kind of a game he was playing with himself. Now, we talk about a Jumara being a larval stage. They're basically giant worms. They travel in worm packs in the blight, and they're very, very, very hard to kill. You basically have to chop them up into little tiny pieces. Using the one power against them only makes them stronger. So, to put it in perspective, a worm can easily kill a Fade. So unless you're a Blade Master one-on-one with a worm, you're probably in a whole lot of trouble. Now, you're probably never going to be one-on-one with a worm because they travel in packs and they can talk to one another. So when they see prey that they're going after, which is basically anything that's not them, they will call it to each other. It's like a fluted, kind of weird, creepy cry, and they will all converge on the target and basically smash them to death and eat them. Now, that's not as bad as they get. So if they go through and become an adult, they are nearly immortal. So they'll live for millennia, and they can go into hibernation and live forever, basically. Again, the one power does not hurt them at all. It just makes them stronger. They look a little bit like what's depicted in the picture here, where they have a whole bunch of legs and spines and a big ringed maw with all kinds of teeth and tentacles, and they are basically near impossible to kill. So it's really great that Agenor didn't make many of these, because they're really nasty creatures. All right, our next creature we're going to talk about is the Gholam. There were 6 made, 3 male and 3 female during the War of Power. Now, they were made specifically to be assassins for channelers, and they were feared by both the light and the dark, and even the Forsaken said maybe they shouldn't have been made. So they're pretty nasty. They have no bones or internal organs. They can squeeze themselves into tight spaces, through a door frame, under a door, through a crack in a wall. Also because of that, they are exceptionally agile, like crazy agile. They can do things that you would not even dream of because they have nothing inside them. They're basically just bags of animated skin. You can cut them, they don't bleed. Blunt force trauma does not work because there's nothing inside them to hurt. The one power, when used against them, the weaves fall apart. They were built to kill channelers, and they're built well. They can feel a channeler within 50 feet of them, and they can also feel the one power being used or held, sort of like an itch. And when they feel that, they can find the channeler even easier. So, almost unkillable, almost immortal, very, very terrible assassins, feared by both the light and the dark. Alright, so there's 3 more Shadowspawn that don't really make the cut as far as having a whole lot to do with the book series, but they are mentioned, so we're going to talk about them. The first ones are Kafar, blood wasps. They're basically giant genetically engineered wasps that will attack and kill anything that goes near their nests and kill them, and they live in the blight. They are a type of Shadowspawn, but they're only mentioned and not really talked about much in the books. The second one are the Forgers. I did mention them earlier. They're the ones that make the Myrddraal swords. They only live in the slopes of Sheol. Their only sole purpose is to make weapons and armor, and that is all. If they're taken from the slopes at all, they fall apart, they stop working, so they're basically constructed just to do one specific task. Now the last ones are Jumara. Jumara are mindless servants. So they're hard to classify as Shadowspawn because they're not malevolent, they don't do anything wrong or bad, but they were created by Aginor. Now, when they were created created to be servants, so they have a telepathic ability to read your mind in order to serve you better. So they can read anything you think of, no matter how disciplined or how good you are, and they can relay that information to their master or use it to make you more comfortable or do other things for you as a servant. Now, they can take very limited commands, so get wine, clean the room, make the bed, take this person here, take this person there, but they are not intelligent in any way, shape, or form. They have 0 combat capability, so they can't fight, nor would they, and they are impossible to use as spies because you can only give them very basic commands. So essentially, although they were constructed, although they were made by the dark side, they technically aren't really malevolent. So I'll leave it up to you whether you decide whether they're Shadowspawn or not. Again, they're only referenced a couple times in the book series. You don't see them very often. All right. Well, I hope you guys learned some stuff today, or if you already knew some stuff, learned some new things, or at least like to listen to me prattle on for however long this video was. Too long, probably. I want to thank you all very much for tuning into my Explain series. It's something really fun I like to do. Let me know in the comments down below if this is something you want me to still keep up with and it's something you like. Other than that, thank you so much, and here's to many more.